let's talk Oppenheimer and Morden Solis. So Oppenheimer's probably a name most of us have become familiar with thanks to his fascinating movie that came out like maybe a month and a half ago. And if you're a gamer, Morden Solis is a name you recognize from the game Mass Effect. Um, Both of these men are incredibly similar to one another. Both of them are scientists. Both of them are basically super geniuses. And they both also, more dramatically, are responsible for culture-shaking events to a people group. Oppenheimer's responsible for the creation of the nuclear bomb during the Manhattan Project in World War II. Okay, Morden Solis is responsible for spreading a modified version of the genophage, which is effectively just a sterility plague. Okay, now I want to look at a broad view of these two individuals and make the case that, again, super geniuses just aren't very good at making moral calculations. They don't make for great moral authorities on a broad set of issues, especially when it affects a large number of people. But let's start with Oppenheimer, since his movie's more recent. He's more on the mind. Let's start with Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer's a complicated guy. Uh, he was proud of his work on the nuclear bomb, but after dropping the bomb in World War II, he became very haunted by the guilt of the results of his work. It said that he was so guilty that President Truman called him a crybaby and told him essentially, don't let that crybaby back in here, which is a heck of an insult from a sitting president. Now, a key part in the movie, Oppenheimer, is him reckoning with those terrible results. Him having to come to terms with, one, how proud he was of his work, but also how terrible the results were. So there's a scene in the movie where, after dropping the bomb, he gives a victory speech in front of a crowd. And essentially what happens is he starts hallucinating that this crowd is being blown away by a nuclear bomb. Right? You see people being turned to ash. A bright white light just starts evaporating the crowd. And it's honestly hard to imagine what the results of your work that caused the deaths of tens of thousands of people, how that would affect a person's heart, a person's mind, a person's psyche, their ability to just sleep peacefully. It's hard to imagine what that would do to a person. But Oppenheimer, it has to deal with that. So Andrew Clavin did a review of the movie Oppenheimer. It's a great review. And in the review, he plays a real interview with the real man Oppenheimer, not from the movie, where he's asked the question, was it worth dropping the bomb? And Oppenheimer in the interview tries to rationalize. So I'm going to read the quote from this interview. This is Oppenheimer talking. The war that started in '39, that's seen the deaths of tens of millions, that's seen brutality and degradation which had no place in the middle of the 20th century. And the ending of the war, by this means, certainly cruel, was not undertaken lightly. But I am not, as of today, confident that a better course was then open. I have not a very good answer to this question. That's Oppenheimer talking. So it's very interesting in that quote how Oppenheimer essentially kind of gives up the ghost on this issue, saying, oh, well, I'm not really sure if we got this one right. All these years later, I don't really know if we got it right. And that's a heck of a thing to say. We're dealing with the nuclear bomb. It's a heck of a thing to say you're not sure if you got right. Especially when you consider that also one of the risks of doing this was that setting off the nuclear bomb could destroy the entire world, could set off a chain reaction in the atmosphere that would just disintegrate the entire, or destroy the entire world, burn it up, cause it to be a nuclear wasteland. So that is a heck of a thing to say. I'm just not sure if we got it right. And I'm not entirely sure that the answer either, that this was kind of the only thing we could do based on the availability. I'm not sure if that answer is honestly for me good enough, given the stakes that they're playing for, right? So, in regards to them being able to destroy the world, here's Oppenheimer says that there's nearly a 0% chance of happening. Now, I know odds are an important thing, but when it comes to potentially destroying the world, shouldn't we be at absolute zero? You'd hope. So that all leads to my whole point: that super geniuses just aren't very good at the whole moral calculus thing. But why? Why are they so bad at this? First, let's ask ourselves this question. Okay, what qualified Oppenheimer to be a moral authority on whether we should use the bomb or not, or whether this should even be created? Right? I mean, the bomb doesn't get created in the U.S. without him. Okay, so what makes him the moral authority to determine whether we should or not? In Oppenheimer, the argument for Oppenheimer was that he was incredibly intelligent, right? The idea that extraordinary intelligence equaled moral maturity. And when you look into this, often what you'll find is that that what actually happens is this tends to be the opposite. It's rarely the case that being super smart also means you're super moral. So during a Lex Friedman podcast with Mark Andreessen, they were discussing AI, and during the conversation, they kind of tailed off to a discussion about Oppenheimer. The movie hadn't come out yet; it was before the movie came out, but they were talking about Oppenheimer nonetheless. And Mark says this about the track record of scientists and morality. So here's Mark Andreessen's quote: "The history of these fields is that the competence and capability and intelligence and training of senior scientists and technologists, there we go, got there eventually, technologists working on a technology, then being able to then make moral judgments on the use of that technology. That track record is terrible. That track record is catastrophically bad." That was Mark Andreessen talking about scientists and their track record on morality. So then he later also goes on to say that a technologist that was working as an advisor in the U.S. government basically suggested that because Russia had nuclear capabilities, that World War III was inevitable. And because World War III was inevitable, that the U.S. should start a preemptive strike on Russia with nuclear weapons so that we have the upper hand. Okay, these are that is a drastic suggestion. Okay, to say, well, World War III is probably going to happen. Let's just start it right now. That's a wild thing to just throw out there to suggest we do, especially coming out of World War II. Hey, let's just jump right into another one. That's wild. I mean, but these are the kinds of decisions that are placed on the shoulders of a lot of these intelligent people. And honestly, suggestions like that make me convinced that none of these people fully grasp the weight of the decisions that they're making. I don't think they fully understand who this affects. These are just calculations to them, data points. So with that, let's turn to Morton Solus now. Let's see where these two match up. But when we get into Morton Solus, here's what I want you to do. I want you to hang on to the question, why are they so bad? Why are these super geniuses so bad at making moral calculations? All right, as we go into Morton Solus, see if you can answer that while we talk about Morton Solus. So first, if you've never played Mass Effect, let me set up the setting just a little bit so you understand, you don't get lost of where we're at if you've never played it before. Mass Effect is a sci-fi game set in our galaxy, where space travel is like driving a car. Okay, so prior to the first game, here's a little bit of the history of the genophage in particular, and how it started and all that. Prior to the first game of Mass Effect, the galaxy found itself in a losing war against a race of mind-controlled monsters. They're called the Rachni. One of the more intelligent races in the galaxy they're called the Solarians, discovered a primitive non-spacefaring race that's really good at war. They're really good at fighting, right? They're stuck on their planet, and all their tribes, all they do all day long, all they dream about, all their waking hours are devoted to warring against each other, right? And so the Solarians find this primitive race. These are called the primitive race is called the Krogan. The Solarians decided to uplift the Krogan with the goal in mind of using them as basically a battering ram or a weapon against the Rachni. That because they're so good at war, they're so much better than the rest of us, they're going to be really good at beating this other monster that we can't beat, right? And this is a gamble that actually worked. They beat the Rachni, effectively almost extincting them and sending them back to wherever they came from. However, here's the problem. When a warmongering race realizes that they're the biggest, baddest group in the room and no one can stop them, there's really nothing stopping them from deciding to take and do whatever they want. And so for the next 300 years, the Krogan warred with the galaxy, the other galactic races, and almost conquered the entire galaxy. I mean, they're better at fighting than all these people. They're tougher. They're built different. And so they almost conquered the galaxy. And the Solarians the entire galaxy actually got so desperate that the Solarians developed a bioweapon designed to genetically modify the probability of viable pregnancies of Krogan females. That's the scientific way of saying it. Essentially reducing successful birth rates to devastatingly low numbers. For the math people, the number is 1 in every 1,000 pregnancies would be successful. I mean, that is a devastatingly low number. So initially, the Solarians believed that it would just be a deterrent. They didn't actually think they would ever use it because it was so devastating, so dangerous to use, to just let loose on the galaxy. Until they were convinced to use it. Until another race said, hey, we are going to lose this. You should probably do something to stop it. So they used it. And in the future, they also sabotaged any Krogan attempt at curing the genophage. Anytime they would, come close to getting a cure, here come the Solarians to just sabotage that. So now we're going to jump into the second Mass Effect game where we meet Mordin Solus. So Mordin's a Solarian scientist and a doctor. His role in the genophage was that he modified it to counteract any Krogan biological adaptation, that the Krogan body was starting to adapt to the genophage and they were starting to overcome it. And so Mordin built this thing to just stop that. Mordin's view of the genophage is that it had to be done to protect the galaxy, since all available data suggested only more war with the galaxy. Right? He modified it because he thought, if the Krogans get back to normal, well, they're going to want to fight us all again, because now they're really mad that we did this to them in the first place, which is a reasonable assessment. You, the player character, Commander Shepard, you recruit Mordin for a mission, a suicide mission, and as a companion, Shepard gets to take Mordin down this sort of journey of walking through his past work. You get to make the case to Mordin that while the genophage may have been good for the galaxy, it certainly was not good for the Krogan at all. And over the course of Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, you get to make Mordin second guess his initial beliefs on the ethics of the genophage. So, during Mordin's loyalty mission, we get a first-hand look at this when one of his students, Malin, is attempting to cure the genophage through some barbaric means. Okay, Mordin and Shepard come across a room of dead Krogan females that volunteered. That's an important point. They weren't captured. They weren't taken by force. They weren't drugged or anything. They voluntarily signed up for these barbaric experiments, hoping that a cure for the genophage would come out of it, hoping that the deaths of their children, that no more stillborn Krogan would have to be born. And so here's what I want to do. I want to read through the conversation that Shepard has with Morden. So it's a little lengthy, so please bear with me. But I think you're going to see. I think we have to see how Morden's brain works, how some of these super geniuses' brain work through these tough issues. So here's Morden. Dead Krogan, female. Tumors indicate experimentation. No restraint marks, volunteer. Sterile warlock, female. Willing to risk procedures, hope for a cure. Pointless. Pointless waste of life. Shepard. I didn't expect you to be disturbed by the sight of a dead Krogan. Morden. What? Why? Because of genophage work? Irrelevant. No. Causative. Never experimented on live Krogan. Never killed with medicine. Her death, not my work. Only reaction to it. Goal was to stabilize population. Never wanted this. Can see it logically, but still unnecessary. Foolish waste of life. Hate to see it. Shepard. Did you visit Tuchanka, their homeworld? After dropping your plague? Morden. Yearly recon missions. Water tissue samples. Ensure no mistakes. Superiors offered to carry it on. Refused. Need to see it in person. Need to look. Need to see. Accept it as necessary. See small picture. Remind myself why I run a clinic on Omega. Shepard. Sounds like you were trying to deal with your guilty conscience. The doctor who killed millions. Morden. Modified genophage project great in scope. Scientifically brilliant, but ethically difficult. Krogan reaction visceral, tragic. Not guilty, but responsible. Trained as a doctor, genophage affects fertility. Doesn't kill. Still, cause this. Hard to see big picture behind pile of corpses. So, from this point on, Morden's starting to realize some of the terrible consequences that he hadn't initially considered when going through with the modification of the genophage. Let's continue. Shepard. Can you really rationalize it all away? How do you justify it? Morden. Wheel of Life. Popular Solarian concept. Similar to human Hinduism and focus on reincarnation. Appealing to see life as endless. Fix mistakes in next life. Learn, adapt, improve. Refuse to believe that life ends here. Life ends here. Too wasteful. Have more to offer. Mistakes to fix. Cannot end here. Could do so much more. So now here's the big accusation that Shepard makes. That you, the player character, can make. Right? You get a wheel of choices on what you want to say, and this is one of the options you can say. Shepard. If you need so much soul searching to get over it, maybe the genophage was wrong. Morden. Had to be done. Rachni wars, Krogan rebellions, all pointed to Krogan aggression. So many simulations. Effects on Krogan population increase. Effects on Krogan population increase all pointed to war. Extinction. Genophage or genocide. Save galaxy from Krogan. Save Krogan from galaxy. Shepard. So you're willing to sterilize a species based on the evidence of a few simulations? Morden. Yes. Millions of data points. Years of arguments. Countless scenarios all noted Krogan fragmentation is dangerous. No unified culture to support repopulation. Would have been war. Turians and humans destroying Krogans utterly. Genophage was better. Saved lives. Okay, so Morden's making the case now that not only was the genophage good, it actually saved lives. Right? That 1 in 1,000 birth rate was saving lives rather than ending it. Well, and look, I mean, it's hard. It's not something you should just summarily dismiss, right? The idea that, well, more war is worse than less war, even if less war means that millions, potentially billions of babies aren't born. Let's continue. So here's the money line from Shepard. Look at the dead woman, Morden. It doesn't look like you saved her. Morden. No, it doesn't. Worked with available data. only option. No other possible. Doesn't matter. So Morden fully sees at this point, like, yeah, no, like there were real consequences to my work, and I hadn't considered it in the first, but now seeing what the reaction to the genophage was. It's changing him before Shepard's eyes, before us the players' eyes, and it's such a rewarding character arc to see in Mass Effect 3, the final game in the series, how his heart fully changes, and he's decided, all right, now I need to cure the genophage. Now I need to help be a solution to this problem for the Krogan. That me, a person who worked on the thing that has hurt this people group, I'm going to now also be the person who helps save this people group. So let's read the last two lines in Morden's journey, in Morden's redemption journey. Shepard, every time we've talked about this before, you've defended the genophage. I had to talk you into saving Malin's data. How can you change your mind now? Morden, I made a mistake. Focused on big picture. Big picture made of little pictures. Too many variables. Can't hide statistics. Can't ignore new data. My responsibility. And Morden's story, if you go down this path in Mass Effect of wanting him to cure the genophage, Morden's story ends with him dying to cure the genophage, dying to undo the work he worked on. It's such a rewarding story to follow. But walking through that, were you able to answer this question? Why are super scientists so bad at moral calculations? Why are they so bad at making those decisions? Let's talk about moral calculations. I think my argument is because often to these super geniuses and the way their mind works, these are just calculations. These are just data points, right? All they see is numbers, equations, formulas, scenarios, simulations. They're not seeing real lives, real people, real societies, real cultures, right? We can run simulations on how they'd be affected, but we're not actually talking to anybody, right? We're not actually seeing anybody be affected. Right? When you spent too much time living in a lab, doing experiments, you don't see a man named John, you don't see a woman named Mary, right? You just see, right, a problem that needs a solution. Right? In Oppenheimer's case, the U.S. government presented Oppenheimer with a problem and said, you're the smartest guy in the room, or one of the smartest guys in the room. Give us a solution. Create a solution for us. Right? So it's no surprise that, or we shouldn't be surprised when we give these people these massive responsibilities, that often the results are going to be, let's just call it, uncomfortable. Now I want to stop here and say that, I'm not saying that all scientists are evil, heartless shrews that don't care about people. There are amazing scientists out there who do care a lot about people. The problem often is super intelligence, right, does not equal an ability to give good moral, make good moral decisions. The two don't automatically equal one another. So let's now answer the question. So, what about this question? Should they have done it? Honestly, I don't know. It's honestly an impossible choice. Okay? I think we need to maintain some humility, right? In understanding that it's easy, almost 100 years later after World War II, to say, well, the obvious choice is you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have dropped the bomb, on Japan. You shouldn't have created the genophage that reduced their fertility rates to 1 in 1,000. Right? It's easy. Let's stay with the real world example of Oppenheimer. It's easy 100 years later to say you should have chosen something else, right? But put yourself in their shoes. Okay, Oppenheimer was, by the way, a Jewish man who was fighting Germany while the Jewish people are being persecuted in Germany. So I'm sure there was a lot of personal stake in wanting to create the bomb before Germany in hopes of stopping them. And then what the U.S. chose to do after was kind of up to them and not really up to him. Put yourself in their shoes. It's an impossible choice. Or at the very least, an incredibly difficult one. So let me make the argument for both sides of the argument, or for both sides of this. Let's start with the first one. It's the necessity argument, right? That we had to do this because there was no other option, or, as Morden says, we're going to save the Krogan and also save the galaxy at the same time by creating the genophage. The necessity argument. So the genophage kept the galaxy out of war with the Krogan, who would have most likely conquered the entire galaxy. All right, Mark Andreessen points out back in that Lex Friedman podcast this little nugget. Nukes kept World War III from happening through mutually assured destruction. Without nukes, there's no reason for the Cold War to not go hot. So that's the main argument for the necessity, that this we needed to do this because there was no better option. Okay? Now, here's the other side of the argument, the arrogance argument. You could argue that no one, not a single person, is capable of morally determining when it is appropriate to wipe a city into oblivion. Okay? That no one is capable of morally determining when a sentient species is worthy of a sterility plague. Because the issue is that imperfect people get stuff wrong all the time, right? Imperfect people make rash decisions, especially in high stakes moments, right? In Oppenheimer's case, during a war. Well, actually, in both of the characters' cases, during a war. So those are both sides of the argument. What do you think? Which side of the argument are you on? Comment down below which side of the argument you're on. Hey guys, this clip was pulled from the weekly Let's Talk Gratitude podcast. If you want to check out the full episode, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. And if you found this content valuable, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to help this channel grow. Thanks for checking it out, and I hope you'll join in the conversation. See ya!